Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Princess Interrupted, the podcast. I'm your host, Allison Ziggy, and today I am joined by an incredibly special guest. She is the owner of Ivy Grows Studio. Please welcome the beautiful, wonderful Ariana Casellas.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited too. Ariana is an absolutely incredible designer, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her magic, her world. Ariana, introduce yourself through your words.
Thank you so much. You're so sweet. I started Ivy Grow Studio like 4 years ago now. I can't believe it's been 4 years. I'm a brand and website designer for female entrepreneurs, women-owned businesses. I help them with their branding and their website design. I also do a little bit of brand strategy, and that goes into the whole design process. I've been doing this since the pandemic. I feel like a lot of us realized our true passions during the pandemic. I've been doing it ever since, and it's been the most incredible journey. I finally feel like I'm actually doing what I've always wanted to do because design was always something that I kind of did as a hobby. I never really thought much of it, and I did it on the side just for fun. I was that kid who was making their Pixo website and MySpace look like super jazzy and super amazing and like super into it when everybody was just not into it as much. I was that kid, and now I get to do that as a job, which is just amazing. I can't believe it's work because I don't really feel like it's work, to be honest.
The best kind of work. I could even just feel your passion, excitement, enthusiasm, and love for what you do as you were describing it. And that's the most aligned place to be is when it doesn't feel like work because it's moving through you. It's your passion, it's your purpose, it's what you're here to do and what you're able to build as a result of following that. So incredible. Ariana and I met through actually a money manifestation program. And we have a group of us in New York who are all friends, have all kept in touch, hold each other accountable. Those friendships have been so deeply meaningful to me. There's three of us who met and we all lived in New York and we all had our own businesses. I'll never forget the first time we met in person. We all went to this coffee shop in Chelsea. We had a crystal and we set an intention. We were like, okay, let's set intentions for each other and let's feel into it for each other. That was over a year ago. It felt like an instantaneous connection where we were able to go so deep right off the bat when we met. But our lives have changed so much as a result of pursuing our passions, pursuing our paths, and just becoming more of who we've always been meant to be.
It's true. And I also feel like we all met at the right time for all of us. Like, I feel
Absolutely.
like it was always meant to be that we connected at this time in our lives, and now we're going on our separate journeys and dealing with life as it comes. I'm so grateful to have you both in my life. It's such a gift. There is just no price to like actual real connections that stay with you. I'm just so grateful to have you in my life.
I really am too. I talk a lot about relationships on this podcast, and if you are in the process of attracting an aligned partner, you are in for such an exciting treat. We're going to be taking concepts from branding and marketing that Ariana is very fluent in, and we're going to be combining that with creating an online dating profile and making yourself stand out, but also presenting yourself in an authentic, true light. I've talked about friendships a little bit on this podcast, but through my own experience, when you honor what you already have and you start to nurture and cultivate your friendships and let yourself be fully seen, it opens you up for so much more love, not just in the future when you call in a partner, but just the experience of the now. I'm so grateful because I feel that now where I feel so much more loved in my life as a result of these deep friendships.
100%. And we were just talking about it the other day. We're not meant to go through this life alone. It's just so important, especially as women. It's very important to have good connections because they really bring you through life. It's such a core part of who we are, and it's so important. And when you open up yourself to being open with people, being vulnerable with people, it's just so rewarding.
There's no other way to describe it. It is rewarding. And it's this experience of being received in love and being loved for all of you. Sometimes it is easier to not necessarily practice through your friendships, but as you're more authentic in your life, it just becomes this byproduct and people are authentic with you and it cultivates more of that feeling of love.
100%. Yes.
I just wanted to see you in that and be like, you've really helped me increase my capacity for that. If you want to share a little bit about the importance of branding yourself, whether it is through dating or as an entrepreneur.
Obviously, when people say I'm a designer, you think of all the visual stuff, right? There is the logo, there's the color palette, there's the font pairings. That is what I do, right? As a designer, I create those things. But it's so important to do that with an intention. Every good brand does it very intentionally because they're trying to do something, whatever that may be. Branding is energy made visible.
Oh, I really want to give that statement a second. It's energy made visible.
Hmm.
That's branding.
Exactly. Because people think about branding, they think about the visual parts of it. They think about what we call the brand identity, the logo, the color palettes, all the things. But it's actually not that. Branding is the vibe you give people, the energy you give off, what people say about you, whether it's you or your business, when you're not there, when you're not in the room. It's like your reputation. When you're working for your business, you can be intentional about the story you're creating about your business. For yourself, personally, you can be intentional about the story that you're creating for people. Obviously, you don't want to create a false story. You want it to be an authentic story to you. But just making sure that things are aligned there. Before anyone talks to you, you're already giving off a vibe. You're already giving off a certain energy, a certain frequency, whether it's intentional or not. Whether you like it or not, you're already manifesting things, whether you're aware of it or not. So, what frequency are you vibrating at? What energy are you giving off? That is always happening. So, really being intentional about what you're doing and then does that align with what you want to call in? What I do a lot is helping women in their business attract aligned clients. And it's very much like when you're dating, trying to attract aligned partners. You want to attract the aligned people. And all of that is branding. In a way, we're all personal brands walking around, whether we like it or not. It's really about being intentional in how you're presenting yourself to the world and, of course, to potential partners, because it just needs to be aligned in what you want. Otherwise, you're just going to attract misaligned people, and nobody wants that.
I love this so much. And even from a conscious versus a subconscious perspective, a lot of what I do with my clients, we're taking the subconscious and we're making it conscious so that you can create a change. It seems like branding, it's choosing what you want to consciously represent yourself as opposed to unconsciously sending out information that doesn't match what you're looking to call in.
Exactly. 100%. People will come to me saying, I want to be a high-end brand. I want to attract these kinds of clients, and I have luxury prices, but I'm not getting people buying those things. I look at two major things, which are clarity and consistency. Clarity creates magnetism, right? So you have to be super clear in branding who you are, what you stand for, who you're speaking to. It's very obvious when a brand is unclear about who they are. It's obvious even through social media. Once someone is clear on who they are, what they're wanting, and who they're speaking to, you can feel it right away, even if it's through an email or it's just on their website. Same thing with dating. When you're going through someone's hinge profile and you look through the prompts and you're kind of reading it and you think, well, okay, this doesn't give me much information. That's because they're not being very clear. And if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to nobody.
Mhm.
You really want something that can show specifically who you are to somebody,
Okay.
because it's just so important that when they actually read your profile, they immediately say, oh, I can get a feel for who this person is because I can just feel it in the energy. And this is what we were talking about, the energy, whether it's your voice, your visuals, what you're saying, all of that has to be super clear, coherent everywhere.
What you're really doing is an energetic exchange where you're
Mhm.
essentially pulling out the ethos, the core essence, like the heart and soul of a brand. Through branding, you're able to energetically magnetize the point of attraction. Whereas if you are not intentional and you're just posting things so that people will buy, you're just going on dates because you want a boyfriend, you're going
Mhm.
through the motions that translates even if it looks beautiful.
This is what a lot of people get wrong because they think, well, if I have this kind of look that it's very attractive and so trendy and people love it, if that doesn't align with who you are, it's sending completely the wrong message, and then people will be confused. This is something we have to look at when we do branding for people. Is this matching up? Does this make sense? That's the second thing, which is consistency. Consistency is so important. You have to be clear across all platforms, everywhere that you show up as a brand, which is like dating very much. Like you can't say something on your profile and then they meet you in person, you're a completely different person. That's never going to work.
It might pull someone in, but it won't make them stay or give you the outcome that you ultimately want, where you can trick people.
We don't want to be catfishing people, even if it's with our personality.
Yeah, it's like the power of making a first impression.
This is what we do in branding. Even from the first impression, you have to communicate who you are, even if it's in a short amount of time. When people go onto your website, you have to get an idea of what this kind of business is like. Are they welcoming? Are they aspirational? Are they relatable or more like high end, luxury? All of this has to be very clear from the beginning. That's why even if they can just look at something for a short amount of time, they can get an idea. Everything plays into it. It's not just the visuals. And that's why we do all this work. When it comes to creating the visuals, we know exactly what we want those things to communicate, you
How do
know?
you go through this process with people? While it seems like it's about the visuals and getting it to look cohesive, you really need to do work on yourself and pre-work to even get to the point where that's going to be relevant.
Yes, exactly. When we do custom branding, the first thing that we do is a brand strategy session where we sit down and talk about all of these things in detail. Sometimes you don't know the answer if I tell you, what are you trying to communicate or who do you want to be and who are you trying to call in? If you were to call in like your ideal client, think about ideal, not who you've been attracting, but who you really want.
Mhm.
Working backwards and thinking, who is this person? What do they value? What do they want? What are their biggest fears? What are their greatest desires? We really go deep into this information so that we can be like, okay, this is what we want. This is who we are. This is what makes us different as a brand. So then we develop their brand strategy. It's basically a big document where we talk about who you are as a brand. So you could hand this to a new employee and they would get this essence. They would know all these things. And then from there, we move on to creating the logos and color palettes and everything based on the brand strategy.
This is so interesting because this is manifestation 101. You're getting clear on
Mm.
what you're calling in. This is sometimes difficult for people to do because they are thinking based on their current reality. Having a brand and presenting yourself requires letting go of limitations and just getting clear on what you want, regardless on what's currently happening externally.
Exactly. I find that a lot of people, it's a stretch for them to think outside of their current reality. I always say, think about your ideal client. They tend to base it off of what they've already done, but I'm always saying to them, we're looking for the future. This is where we want to go because everything that we're doing is going to create your future. We're thinking ahead. We're not wanting to repeat what we already have. We want to step into the new version of us.
That's manifestation 101 as well, where you make decisions from this future version of yourself to call in the aligned reality. This happens with dating where it's believing in the inevitability of what you're calling in and trusting the vision you've been given. You have it because you're able to see it through.
Also being very clear about what you want and just being very real and authentic about that. I see many times businesses just want to copy what they think works or think there's a magic way of doing a certain thing. I always tell them, no, the best thing to do is to be radically yourself because that's what's going to make you stand out. That's what's going to create magnetism. That's what differentiates you. That's what creates cult brands ultimately. Same thing with dating. You really want to be clear and don't be afraid to stand out. I always tell people don't be afraid to repel the people that you don't want because you don't want those people. Why are you trying to be everything to everyone?
That comes from limiting beliefs because it's a fear of rejection.
Exactly.
But the more that you experience rejection from things that aren't meant for you, the
Mhm.
easier when you have the desire, sometimes you're willing to morph into who you need to be in order to attract but that's just scarcity at play.
Exactly. Your Hinge profile that I took a
Yeah.
look, you have these photos where you can feel your essence. You're in beautiful clothes and beautiful dresses, laughing and being who you are. You can really tell what kind of person you are because you're just like that in all your photos. You talk about how you love to travel, when you did your colors, and how you dress now. That's super unique. Something like that really brings out your essence a lot more than just some vague answer or something that you think people want to hear. You're just like, this is what I want, and I don't want anything different than this.
And my profile didn't always used to be like that. I used to have on my profile, it was like way to describe me, and I was like total wild card. I thought it was so clever. If I were to
Right.
show you my old prompts, it would say something about me. I don't usually hate winter, but this season is testing my patience. If you have this, we'll get along. And I said witty humor. I just attracted people who wasted my time, or I would get swiped on right away and say yes to a date, and then it would just feel like I would rather be at home reading.
Right. I really believe that the clearer you are about what you're looking for, the more success you're going to get because the people who are not meant for you and who are going to waste your time, they're just going to swipe. And the people who are going to really resonate with what you say, they're the ones that are going to want to go on a date with you. It's just so powerful when everything is clear and consistent. And by consistent as a brand, if you say high end but have DIY branding, that's going to make people not trust you. And I think that's the same with online dating. Because if you're not consistent in what you're saying and how you actually are, that's going to make people not trust you. The main thing is being consistently yourself and authentically yourself. Are you the same person on social media? Are you the same person when they meet up with you? Are you the same person on your dating profile? It's all consistency, and that builds ultimate trust.
Was there things to ask yourself to get clear, getting clear on who you're calling in while being yourself?
I would start with what kind of relationship am I calling in? And am I actually showing up as the version of me who can match that relationship? When you're calling in somebody, you have to be that first. You might want certain things, but if somebody had all those things, would they want to be with somebody who's like you? So being aligned in that same way is very important. Think about what energy am I giving off? If I read my own profile, what energy am I giving off if I were some person who stumbled across this profile? What signals am I kind of sending? Am I being congruent in everything that I'm saying? Or is there something that feels off? Like maybe I tried to be someone I wasn't in this part. Like you tried to be clever with your answers. Because if you're a super nurturing person and you're
Mhm.
very soft spoken, but you think that people want a boss bitch and you're trying to be like a boss, that's not going to be congruent at all. And of course, then it's going to bring in misaligned partners. And just being real with yourself. What is your natural energy and what are your authentic desires? Forget what everybody else is saying about what you need in a partner. What do you genuinely want? What do you genuinely need? Being real about your own needs. The more you can be real about who you are and who you want, then you're
No,
going to attract the most aligned partners.
I completely agree with that. What do you find that people struggle with the most with developing a brand identity?
A lot of people have never even done a brand strategy at all. So they've either DIY their branding, like picked things that they like the look of just because they centered it around them versus their ideal client or who they're wanting to call in, which is also a very big distinction. They've never really thought about it in terms of what is it that I want to communicate. Or they try to be someone else because they saw that whoever they admire is doing it a certain way, so they just want to replicate that. I help them find what it is about them that makes them special, that makes them different, and really amplify that and be the cheerleader for that, and also make them realize that is their special sauce, and that's really what's going to make the difference for them because that makes them stand out.
So a DIY is basically you just pick and choose whatever based on what you're feeling. Like there's no bigger intention behind what you're doing.
If you DIY, you just try to do it yourself. Not everybody is a designer, so
Yeah.
you do what you can with what you have. Or maybe they've worked with a designer before, but they never did any sort of strategy behind it. They had a vision and said to the designer, I want it to look like this. The designer made it look like that. But there's no real purpose and intention
Oh.
behind it. That's why the strategy is so important. You can't skip the strategy because you can make it look great, but is it really helping you in your goals? Is it really helping you stand out? Is it really helping you in what you want to be doing? Because, of course, anyone can look good and anyone can look like everybody else, but is that what we want to do? What are we signaling to people if you do look like that?
You keep saying the coherence and the consistency. Is it
Mhm.
clear and is it consistent? In terms of the coherence, is it in the words? Is it in the energy? Is it in the overall brands? What comes off as the most important?
It's everything. Think about it. When you interact with your favorite brands, those kind of brands that you are so obsessed with everything, you just want everything. You just want to live in that world of that brand. It's because they are just so congruent in everything that they do, whether it's the visuals, how they talk to you, how they show up in your email, or how they show up on social media. When you can tell that a post is theirs, when you can tell that an email is theirs, when you get a package from them, if they have physical products, you can tell it's from that brand. That is the best signal that it is a congruent and clear brand. And that's why it's so magnetic. That's why you're obsessed with it because all of this is so on point.
It's like you're creating a little universe when you're creating
Exactly. It's
brands.
world building. Yeah.
It's world building. Wow. How do you start separating yourself?
If you're brand new and just starting, it takes some trial and error to figure out who you are and what makes you different. Hearing what clients say about you, what stood out to them about you, all this is information that you gather. When you get to a point where you're doing custom branding, you have some of this information already. That's why we take that and look at it and be like, it's very clear that this is what's making you stand out. So let's go all in with that.
Mm, you really
So,
help to pinpoint and turn the dial up on what is
exactly.
already working. It's
Exactly.
not about becoming someone else. It's not about creating out of thin air. It's all about having awareness of what's working and going all in on that.
Not only looking at what's working, but also where you want to go in the future and connecting those
Oh.
dots. Because not everybody wants to build an empire. Not everybody wants to open 100 stores or have a media empire and a big team. Not everybody wants that. Aligning what you want in the future to
Mm.
what makes you different and going all in with that so that you can become more magnetic and then go towards that future that you're wanting for your business.
That's tying in what you were talking about at the beginning of getting clear of what your intention is, what the relationship is that you're building with the people you're calling in. So
Exactly.
let's say you have a coaching business. This is where it all ties back. If you want to be aspirational or if you want to be best friends, if
Exactly.
how you speak to people,
Exactly.
by the way you show up in your branding, you're
Mhm.
teaching the clients how to interact with you.
Exactly. Because different brands have different vibes. In brand strategy, we have what's called brand archetypes. There's the lover archetype, the sage archetype, the hero archetype, the girl next door archetype, the best friend. They're going to act and talk to you in very different ways. They're also going to look very different. To give you an example, there's the creative archetype. Apple is a very creative archetype. They're the visionary, they're expressive, they're inspiring. And the hero is more like Nike, people, our brands. Beyonce is a hero archetype. There's the sage, which is like wise, intellectual. It's more educational. So, like Deepak Chopra or TEDx or Harvard, like all of these brands, they're going to be talking way different than the hero archetype. Even the girl next door, which is more like a Target or a Dove, they're not going to be showing up like a Nike everywhere, right? They're totally different because they're talking to a totally different audience. Same thing applies to personal brands too, because not everybody's the same and everybody's talking to different people. It's important to know and have that clarity who you are and who you are talking to.
That is so powerful. I love the way that you just broke that down. That seems so obvious, but I have never really thought about it that way before. When you think about these brands, they can spark different actions within you. I think about the creator Amanda Francis. She's the
Hmm.
money queen, but I think about her brand and she's very aspirational, but she also talks to you like you're talking to a friend.
Right, exactly.
So that's
Yeah,
kind of a
so it's more relatable.
combination. What Gabby Bernstein gives off sage vibes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There are people who do the same thing who are very different archetypes. The sage is much more like, I'm going to teach you the ways of the world, intellectual, versus someone who's being more relatable, more like they could just be the girl next door. They could be your friend. You feel like you know them very well. They talk to you like a friend.
That reminds me of Manifestation Babe.
Hmm.
She gives girl next door turned aspirational.
Yes, exactly. I think she's made that shift because it very much was girl next door before when she was just starting out. But now she's gotten to a place where she's very successful and she made a little shift there where she's like, let me teach you how to do all these things. It's very aspirational now. Maybe diving into the hero.
There is an evolution of brands. And this
Exactly.
is probably not a process you just go through once. This is something that as you go through your own spiritual journey, having a brand is one of the most spiritual journeys that you can choose for yourself. You go through these different renditions.
That's why it's always very important to really go back to, okay, who are we? What are we doing here? It's very important. And you don't just do it once. It's kind of a living, breathing thing, your brand. So it should always be aligned. Sometimes when you pivot in your business, that can pivot too. It should be changing as you change. It's something very important to take into account. It's your core, it's who you are. And that's how people are magnetized to you because of who you are.
How important do you feel like things like typeface and text are versus overall messages versus
Hmm.
things like that?
That's where consistency comes into play. And this is with colors too, because certain colors communicate different things. We associate them with different things. With typefaces too, certain typefaces look a certain way and others look a totally different way. And they give off different feelings, right? And we associate them with different things. That's why everything has to align. You can't say you're a down to earth brand that's all about being homemade and using some super modern serif font that something like Apple would use, and it looks very robotic. It doesn't tie together. It doesn't give off the same message. That's where you need to have congruence and cohesiveness in everything. Colors are so important because they really do make you feel different things. That's why color theory is so interesting. A lot of people come to me and they say, these are the colors that I like. And I'm like, okay, first we have to look at, does this communicate what we want it to communicate? But also, it's about what your client is seeing, what your audience is seeing, not you. You may have some history with that color, but that doesn't mean it's communicating what you want.
There's this whole subconscious communication that happens within a brand. It's almost like it's another language, essentially.
Yes, you may be communicating something that you're not aware of. My job is to help you make sure that everything is communicating the same thing.
That is so fascinating just to think that what font you're using be communicating something that's completely incongruent with the overall message. This is almost like the visual subconscious.
That's why sometimes when you look at a brand and you go, oh, I just love that, and you don't know why, but you just do, it's all these little things that are communicating to you something, and you don't know what it is. You can't really pinpoint it if you are not used to being in this world or not a designer yourself. Everything is communicating all the time. The photography that you're using is communicating one thing, the style of it, the colors that you're using, the fonts that you're using. And that's just the visual portion, your tone, even the emojis that you're using. When someone messages you, everyone has a different messaging style, right? That's part of your personal brand. For example, I'm someone who uses a lot of exclamation marks in my text because I'm always very excited. I feel like you can already tell that by the way I message. That's just a little example of how even something as small as that is communicating so much already about who that person is or who that brand is.
Everything about you is very cohesive in terms of how you present yourself through Ivy Grow Studio, but also through Ariana and how you show up. When I think of you, there is a distinct image. It's very crisp, it's very clean. It reminds me of open breeze, plants, and that grounded earth energy. That seems very coherent in the way that you present yourself as a person, but as a brand owner. You also brought up on the dating profile that I had shared with you about how I had done my colors in Bulgaria, which
Yes.
that is actually a way that I had unintentionally branded myself.
Well, that process is so fascinating. Something that's very trendy right now is dressing like your Venus sign. All this stuff super fascinates me as someone who does branding,
Yeah,
right? Because it's branding yourself. You can take it or leave it, take what works for you, leave what doesn't. There's some truth to it, but I also find that it's a great tool to give you a starting point and then curate from there. That's what I did. I'm a big
absolutely.
Pinterest person, as you can imagine, with my job. That's what I do. I use it as a starting point, and then I go, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. And slowly but surely, you realize there are patterns in what you're attracted to, and also what looks good on you, and all these things that you curate. Then you come up with something that's unique, and that can be your style. It is definitely personal branding.
It really does weed out what's not meant for you when you just are who you are. I post on LinkedIn sometimes, and one of my old coworkers was like, "Why does she dress like a princess? That's so unprofessional." And it's like, that is my brand, the Princess
Mhm.
Interrupted Ziggy brand universe. It is very princess dresses and flowers and things like
Yeah.
that, but it does repel the people who aren't meant to be. It's interesting that was even on my dating profile that I dress like a princess. Part of that was through the colors and learning my real essence, which is called angelic romantic. But it wasn't like I followed these strict set of rules, but it did make me feel like more me to dress like.
Yeah. Exactly. I love that you put that on your profile because, first of all, I think it's so you, and the right person is going to love that about you. The people who are going to love it are going to be the ones that are aligned with you because they're going to love the unique stuff about you. They're going to get a much clearer picture of who you are when you say things like that.
While I did colors for my personal style evolution and that leaked into me, it was a huge thing of personal development. It seems like that's what you do for people's brands. You do the equivalent of their color assessment.
Yeah,
This
in a
is your
way.
essence, this is your colors, this is
Mhm.
what communicates. You
Mhm.
translate it from an energy into a visual representation, which is what you said that a brand does at the very beginning.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the frequency, the energy that you're giving off. The visuals have to align with that. That's everything that goes into branding. It's just so multi-layered. It's like the iceberg. What you see at the top is the visuals, the logo, and the colors and the fonts, but underneath there's all of that strategy that makes everything be intentional and feel cohesive, feel clear, feel congruent, and you don't know what it is when you're interacting with it, but all of this has been thought of beforehand. So much goes into it.
The craziest part that I'm still wrapping my mind around is how subconsciously you're always sending out messages. You can take your power back in how you're communicating and what you're saying. You might be
Exactly.
subconsciously sending out messages that don't match your intentions
Yes,
whatsoever.
exactly. It's like doing a personal audit on yourself first and being like, what messages, what signals am I sending out? Does it align with who I am? Does it align with what I want? And really getting clear on that. Once you're clear on that and everything you're putting out is cohesive, everything changes.
You said the problem is that most people just willy-nilly pick things here and there and throw it all together. Whereas step one, know thyself, know who you are, what you stand for, those
Mm.
things. And then the next step is, who do you want to call in that's based on not just where you're at, but where you're going next. And the bigger picture, not just the chapter, the actual bigger story, and speaking to that. And then step three is creating this universe and inviting people into it.
Yes, exactly. You
And
are your own brand. You live in your own brand world, and you're able to change that and know at the core who you are and invite the people who you want in your life.
I have learned so much. You just have such a wealth of knowledge around this topic. My wheels are turning. This is something that everybody needs. How do people find you? How do people work with you?
If you have a business and are in need of branding and getting clear on who you are and what you want to call in, you can always find me at ivygrowstudio.com, and you can find me on Instagram at ivygrowstudio.
Amazing. And I will make sure to include links to your socials in the show notes so that people can find you and access you. This has totally blown my mind. And just to learn even more specific details of how you can make yourself more magnetically attractive by the way you're presenting yourself. Whether
Yeah.
it is dating or branding, they're not all that different.
It's so similar. I'm also going to give you prompts where you can put in the show notes that you can ask yourself whether you're dating or if you are a brand, just to get more clarity. Kind of do an audit on yourself so that if you need to change things, you can, but really starting that process of seeing it through a storytelling lens, because this is always just storytelling. What story are you telling? Are you telling the story you
Mhm.
want to tell? Or are you telling a different story and then being surprised that you're not getting the results that you want? It's just about owning your truth, owning who you authentically are. And when we stop doing what everybody else is telling us to do and listen to ourselves, that's when everything falls into place. It works in branding, and it works in dating, and it works in life.
It's also having the courage to believe in yourself because if you're presenting yourself as this brand, this person, and firmly rooting in who you are and where you're going, that's a really attractive energy, but it does take courage to believe
Yeah,
before it's seen.
definitely. It comes with experience too. The more you experience life, the more you realize what you like and what you don't like. That's not to say you can't trial and error. Everything always gives you more information about what you want to do next. And using that to your advantage of this doesn't mean I failed. It just means I know what I don't want now. It just means
It's
I know what doesn't serve me or what my preferences are. It's just information.
it really is just neutral. It's the
Yeah.
story you're telling yourself. And if you're telling yourself a disempowered story, that might be translating through in the way that you're showing up. It all starts with deciding to tell a better story.
Exactly. And I tell my clients that too. In branding, it's the same thing. I always ask them, okay, why didn't it feel aligned? What was not really matching up with you? What didn't feel right to you then? Maybe it was the kind of people they were attracting. Maybe they didn't feel like it was their real voice. It was hard for them to show up on social media. These are all signs of something that is not aligned with who you truly are. So asking yourself that and then being like, okay, well, how can we change that so that it does align with what we want and who we are?
Ariana, thank you so much for joining me today for today's podcast. This was
Of course.
so incredibly valuable. You are so incredibly knowledgeable. I can't wait to see the prompts that you share and include in the show notes. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in, for listening to this week's episode of Princess Interrupted, the podcast. Love you and see you next week.
Thank you.